There are encounters that defy time, logic, and distance, connections born from something deeper than simple affinities or coincidences. Sometimes, two souls are separated, not by choice or mistake, but by an invisible force acting beyond comprehension, destiny. And yet, these souls continue to seek one another, even without knowing it. There are signs, small fragments of recognition, recurring dreams, synchronicities that seem like chance but are silent callings. When two souls are bound by something greater, the universe finds subtle ways to bring them together. And it is in this reunion that one of the greatest mysteries of human existence resides, the reconnection that changes everything. If you have ever felt that someone was part of you without being able to explain it, this video is for you. Leave in the comments. If it's meant to be, the universe will show the way. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your support in the comments. This strengthens this space of awareness and allows us to continue sharing content like this. According to Carl Gustav Jung's analytical psychology, deep connections between two people are not limited to the conscious plane. They emerge from archetypal and unconscious layers of the psyche, revealing bonds that transcend time and space. When two souls are separated by greater forces, such as destiny, this often painful separation activates the process of individuation in each. Jung understood that an individual must step away from the other in order to dive into themselves, confronting their projections, their shadow, and the denied aspects of their identity. Projections are central pieces of this journey. We project onto others all that we do not recognize within ourselves: unlived potential, repressed fears, and secret desires. Often we believe we have found a soulmate because we see in the other what we lack in ourselves. Separation in this sense becomes essential. It forces the withdrawal of these projections, provoking pain but also growth. The shadow, that dark and repressed side of our personality, emerges with intensity during separation. It is in this confrontation that the true self begins to reveal itself. As each soul reconnects with itself, an integration of inner masculine and feminine principles, the animus and anima, takes place, generating emotional and spiritual maturity. When this process has advanced far enough, signs begin to appear. Not mystical signs in the romantic sense, but symbolic manifestations that indicate reconnection is possible and perhaps inevitable. Destiny then is not a fixed point, but a field of possibilities that unfolds as the soul evolves. When two souls are ready, the reunion is not just possible, it becomes necessary. The separation between two deeply connected souls is rarely just a mistake or random circumstance. In Jung's analytical psychology, there are moments when distance becomes a necessary movement, a kind of inner calling for each individual to embark on their own journey of self-discovery. This rupture, however painful, carries a powerful archetypal function. To propel the process of individuation, to individuate means to become who one truly is, not through the expectations of others, of society, or inherited patterns, but by excavating the depths of the soul. When two people live an intense and symbolic connection, it is common for them to blur into one another, partly losing their identity in the name of union. This entanglement, though pleasurable and captivating at first, can generate emotional and spiritual stagnation, preventing each from developing their own potential independently. It is at this point that destiny, as a symbolic force, may operate the separation. The pain of distance serves as a trigger for inner awakening. Forced to face oneself without the presence of the other soul, the individual begins to hear inner voices that had been silenced. Restlessness, existential questions, forgotten memories, and above all, a clearer perception of emotional wounds arise. The other, once a source of meaning, is replaced by the mirror of the unconscious, demanding confrontation, courage, and lucidity. Separation also allows the dismantling of idealizations. Often we love more the idea of the other than who the other truly is. With distance, projections begin to dissolve, and the psychic reality of each one imposes itself with greater clarity. What was seen as a half of the soul reveals itself as a reflection of neglected parts of oneself. This recognition is painful, but absolutely necessary. One can only truly love another when one learns to love and to know their own wholeness, with both light and shadow. Throughout this process, the individual is called to rescue forgotten aspects of themselves, Old passions, dormant talents, and abandoned dreams resurface with strength. The silence of absence becomes fertile ground for listening to the soul, and it is at this point that true alchemy begins. Pain transforms into wisdom, loss into growth, emptiness into creative potential. Jung saw the soul not as something fixed, but as a flow in constant transformation. And individuation is precisely that, a continuous movement of integration. Separation functions as a rite of passage. It marks the end of a phase where the other was the center of life, and begins a new cycle where the center becomes the self, the psychic totality integrating conscious and unconscious. Curiously, it is precisely at this point that separated souls may begin silently to reunite. Not necessarily on the immediate physical plane, but in a higher psychic frequency, where both begin to vibrate in tune with who they truly are. Individuation does not guarantee return, but it creates the internal conditions so that, if reunion happens, it is more integral, less projected, and more genuine. Destiny, in this symbolic vision, does not act as an executioner that separates, but as an invisible master that teaches through separation. It dismantles attachment to reveal real love. It dismantles the bond so that authentic connection can be born. And finally, it invites each soul to remember that the other was never their home, but the mirror pointing the way back to themselves. Separation, therefore, is not the end. It is the beginning of a much deeper return, the return to essence. And it is this return that paradoxically can make reunion with the other possible, not as dependency but as communion. Every meaningful relationship, especially those marked by a deep soul connection, is fertile ground for projections and the emergence of the shadow. Jung identified that when we relate, we do not see the other as they are, but as we imagine them to be. We project onto them contents from our unconscious, unrecognized, repressed, or idealized parts of our psyche. This process is especially intense in encounters charged with stronger archetypal weight, as happens between souls bound by something beyond logic. When these souls meet, there is an almost immediate recognition. It feels as if time loses its meaning and a sense of familiarity takes hold. Yet behind this sense of completeness often lies projection. We see in the other what we long to find in ourselves: courage, gentleness, freedom, depth, light. But we also project our fears, wounds, and everything we deny within us. The other becomes a canvas on which we paint our unconscious contents. At this point, the shadow enters the scene. The shadow consists of all aspects we reject in our personality: selfishness, jealousy, resentment, anger, neediness, arrogance. During the initial stage of a soul-bound relationship, these aspects remain dormant, hidden under the enchantment of projection. But with time or with separation, these contents surface. What was once idealized begins to dissolve. We start to see the other as they are, and no longer as we expected them to be. And this can be devastating, for it forces us to confront the truth, not only about the other, but about ourselves. This confrontation with the shadow can create ruptures. That is why many deeply connected relationships are also marked by intense separations. The pain of watching projection fall apart is often mistaken for heartbreak, when in fact it is the soul demanding authenticity. For Jung, this moment is crucial. It is the instant when we must choose. Either remain trapped in illusion, trying to force the other to be what we projected, or begin the process of withdrawing projections and looking within. In relationships involving soul bonds, this withdrawal of projections is often accompanied by suffering, because we are not only dealing with an ending or disappointment, but with the collapse of an unconscious ideal. The relationship that once seemed perfect crumbles, and in its place arises the mirror. And what we see there is not always beautiful. We see our insecurities, our neediness, our emotional dependence. But also, if we have courage, we begin to see our capacity to love, our emotional depth, our desire for transformation. The shadow, when integrated, is not an enemy. It becomes a guide. Jealousy may reveal the wound of abandonment. Anger may point to a lack of boundaries. Idealization may show how much we have yet to recognize our own worth, and the other, who seemed to be the center of the pain, was only the messenger. They embodied aspects hidden within ourselves. That is why many reunions are only possible after shadow work. As long as we project our fantasies or run from our denied aspects, The relationship remains trapped in cycles of pain and frustration. But when we manage to peel back these layers, something new can emerge. No longer the desire to find in the other what is missing, but the desire to share what has become whole within. Separation, in this sense, functions as a portal. It compels the confrontation of the shadow and the release of projections, and reunion, when it happens, no longer takes place on the level of fantasy, but on the level of the matured soul. Now, it is no longer about seeking in the other a complement, but about recognizing in them a conscious reflection of one's own totality. Love between soul-bound beings, then, is not easy love. It is love that demands. It demands the courage to shed idealizations, to face one's own darkness, to acknowledge hidden parts, and above all, to grow. For only after crossing the dark night of the soul can we truly recognize the light in the other and in ourselves. In many moments of life, especially in deep soul bonds, seemingly random events begin to align unexpectedly. Carl Jung called these events synchronicities, meaningful coincidences with no direct causal relation, yet carrying profound symbolic significance for those experiencing them. In the context of souls separated by greater forces, synchronicities arise as signs of the collective and individual unconscious, indicating that a reunion may be approaching, not as the result of rational planning, but as the outcome of an inner transformation resonating outward. As the soul undergoes individuation and confronts its shadows, it gradually harmonizes its inner contents. And when this happens, the world around begins to respond. People reappear without explanation, places gain new meaning, recurring symbols enter dreams, old songs play unexpectedly, messages are sent without conscious intent. These manifestations, far from mere chance, act as symbolic mirrors reflecting the state of the soul. One of the most common forms of synchronicity in the context of soul reunions is the constant emergence of memories tied to the other. Vivid dreams, involuntary recollections, sudden sensations of presence, as if the other were near even while distant. These experiences, however subjective, are rooted in the unconscious. Jung understood that the personal unconscious is in constant dialogue with the collective unconscious, and when two souls move towards symbolic closeness, this dialogue intensifies. The reunion, before occurring physically, often takes place energetically, and synchronicity is the language of this reconnection. It is not about forcing encounters or interpreting every coincidence as a sign. It is about perceiving when the external world begins to resonate with inner movements. If before the other seemed absent from reality, now they begin to appear between the lines of life. A conversation mentioning their name, a place both once visited that returns to your path, a lost object reappearing. All these are ways in which the unconscious announces that something is being prepared. It is important to remember that synchronicity is not superstition. It is not based on magical thinking, but on the deep perception that there is a link between inner and outer, between psyche and world. Jung studied this phenomenon extensively and concluded that synchronicities occur more often when a person is open to self-knowledge, sensitive to symbolic messages, and in tune with their true path. When two souls separated by destiny begin to move toward a possible reunion, both start noticing signs. Sometimes these signs are shared even without direct communication. One dreams of the other on the same night. Both feel sudden restlessness. There is a vibration that escapes rationality, but resonates strongly in the symbolic sphere. This vibration is not illusory. It reflects the internal movement of reconnection with the self, which, as it expands, touches the energetic field where these souls remain linked. The symbolic universe is rich in manifestations. Animals appearing repeatedly, recurring numbers, words or phrases highlighted in different contexts. All may carry messages from the unconscious. The key is to develop listening, not literal listening, but symbolic listening, which allows us to perceive meaning behind apparent chance. Synchronicities do not say get back together, but they signal there is something to be seen, something to be understood, something that still pulses. Many people ignore or rationalize these manifestations, and it is understandable since we live in a culture that values logic, measurement, and tangibility. But the soul communicates in another language, the language of symbol, myth, and the invisible that moves the visible. By opening to this listening, a person not only approaches the other, but above all connects more deeply with themselves. Synchronicities, therefore, are echoes of the unconscious, trying to restore a meaningful connection. They should not be followed blindly, but observed with attention and respect. They are clues that the soul is ready for a new cycle, and perhaps to reunite with the one who, though distant, has never stopped resonating within. In Jungian thought, every human being carries within an image of the opposite sex, a complementary principle that directly influences how we relate, love, and seek the other. In men, this inner image is called anima, the archetype of the inner feminine. In women, it is animus, the archetype of the inner masculine. These principles are not just psychological traits, but living powers of the unconscious, shaped by both personal and collective experiences. And in deep relationships, especially between souls perceived as bound by something greater, true reunion is only possible when these inner aspects are reintegrated. The anima, when not integrated, makes men seek in the outer world the representation of the idealized feminine, sensitive, nurturing, mysterious, spiritual. The animus, when projected, makes women seek in the other, the strong, protective, rational, determined masculine. These images are often unconscious and projected onto romantic partners. Thus, what one loves in the other is, in truth, a reflection of one's own psyche. And the relationship, however intense, is based on the search for something not yet recognized within. This dynamic is common in soul connections. The sense of completeness, deep identification, and inexplicable magnetism, all of this may be deeply rooted in anima and animus projections. At first, passion flares intensely, for the other seems to embody all that is missing. But over time, this illusion crumbles, leaving the real task to integrate these aspects within one's own soul. Separation, as already explored, is a call to individuation, and an essential part of this process is reclaiming anima and animus. When a man learns to relate to his inner feminine, he develops intuition, empathy, sensitivity, the ability to surrender. When a woman integrates her masculine, she strengthens autonomy, capacity for action, rational clarity, and emotional stability. This inner balance creates maturity, and it is this maturity that prepares two souls for a more conscious, less projected, more real reunion. Without this integration, reunion may happen, but it tends to repeat old patterns, idealizations, demands, emotional dependence, misunderstandings that mask true connection. Jung believed that each person's task is to become whole, not to look for a missing half in another. When this happens, love ceases to be lack and becomes choice. It becomes a construction between two complete beings who recognize each other not out of need, but out of harmony. During the integration process, challenges arise. The anima may manifest as melancholy, discouragement, attachment to the past, a relentless search for something always out of reach. The animus may appear as judgment, rigidity, impulsiveness, or excess rationality. Recognizing these inner movements is the first step. Understanding that they are not flaws, but archetypal expressions in imbalance is the second, and the final step is working with these aspects through inner listening, symbolic cultivation, and diving into the unconscious. Symbolic rituals, artistic expression, Jungian therapy, writing, silence, contemplation, all are ways of dialoguing with these inner images. And as the dialogue deepens, a silent transformation takes place. The other ceases to be the center of the search and becomes the mirror of the journey. Reunion ceases to be an external goal and becomes a natural consequence of inner harmony. And when reunion happens, it is no longer burdened with unrealistic expectations, but filled with presence, awareness, and acceptance. The reintegration of anima and animus is therefore the symbolic key to the return of separated souls. Not because it guarantees physical reunion, but because it allows, if it occurs, that it happens on a new level of consciousness. Where once there was lack, now there is exchange. Where once there was projection, now there is recognition. Where once there was pain, now there is wisdom. And where once there was separation, now there can be communion. Two souls can only truly unite when each has learned to love and integrate the opposites within themselves. This is the true return, the one that begins inside and reflects outward. When this happens, destiny no longer separates, it guides. There are encounters that transform, separations that heal, and reunions that reveal who we truly are. When two souls separate by force of destiny, the initial suffering may feel unbearable. But in the light of Jungian psychology, we understand that this separation is often the beginning of a process of profound inner transformation. It is in solitude that the soul learns to hear its own voice, confront its shadows, withdraw its projections, and integrate forgotten aspects of itself. Individuation is the path each one takes to become whole, and it is only after this journey that the reunion of two souls becomes possible in its truest form. Without illusions, without the weights of the past, but with the mature presence of those who have learned to recognize themselves before seeking the other. If you felt that this content touched something inside you, it may be that your soul is ready to understand the true meaning of reunion, not only with the other, but with yourself. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring content that expands your awareness and transforms your journey. And don't miss the video appearing on your screen now. It is the next step in your search for yourself.